Good morning, my name is Jacob Folger. I'm an artist sculptor, and today we're going to make a fairy door, a fairy window, and a little moss fairy garden. And I'm starting off with rolling some clay. This is going to be for the door frame. I think this is going to be for a kind of a small fairy door is what I have in mind. And sometimes it's better to roll your door frames and that sort of thing, window frames, on a board to keep everything nice and uniform. I'm working in polymer clay, and this brand I like is Sculpey 3, but you could use just about any brand as long as it's water resistant, since we'll be using live moss and that will need to be watered. So I'm going to start it off with just a length like that, and got a knife over here. I'll just cut a section of it to start off with, something you can work with there. I want to roll it a little bit more. The board I'm working on has paper taped to it, and that will keep it from the clay from sticking to it too much. Now I'm just going to shape the door frame the way I like, and it's just going to be kind of an arched door frame. There's some wrinkles on the board here, and they kind of marked up the door frame, so I'm just smoothing that out a little bit. Like I said, I do want this to be a pretty small door. And then what I'll do is cut a section for the threshold, and that will go right there. And I'm going to use a little bacon bond here. This is made by Sculpey, just to give a better bond for the threshold to the door frame. Just put it in there and blend it in, meaning, you know, to smooth and give a nice smooth transition of the two parts being joined. If you've seen me make fairy doors in some of my other videos, you'll know this kind of a fairly regular thing that we're doing here. Next, I'm going to roll a little ball of clay and then kind of start to roll it into like a little oblong shape like that. We're going to fill the space in here so that we can sculpt it. We can actually get a little bit more clay there. And I'm just going to basically try to start to create the shape of the door inside there that's going to go in there. Place it in, and then just simply pushing down and outward, I can fill that little void. Then I'll take a sculpting tool and just cut it in so that it's secure to the door frame. I'm turning the board so I can see it from all angles. Now I also, even though that's all filled in there, I can shape it further and just also get the lines straight and uniform just by pushing on it like that. Now I'm going to take a sculpting tool that has somewhat of a sharper point to it, and I'm going to carve in the lines for the door planking. When you carve like that, sometimes it flares out the lines around it, and you can either smooth them or leave them. You know, really is up to you. I really like the rustic look and that gives us, but I'm going to go ahead and smooth a little bit here. And then I think I'd like to have kind of a support beam going across to support the planking. So it's basically, I roll a little noodle of clay like this. I guess another term for it would be cross member. Just press it into place there. Make another. Roll it out, a little noodle like that. I can just take a sculpting tool and just basically just sculpt that in there a little bit. Turn around to get the other side. And then I think I'm just going to put a little doorknob on there. It's got to be a very small piece of clay. There's a little ball there. Just sort of press that into place there. I'm going to just cut in a line on the bottom here for the kind of seam going along the base there of the threshold. Relatively simple kind of door there, but this is, when you see what I'm going to do, you'll see I want things to be fairly simple. I want this to be a very kind of rustic door. I'm just putting in some kind of markings to define the wood grain and that sort of thing. Now I want to make a window, so I'll start off with rolling a noodle, and I want this to be similar to the door frame, so I want it to be about the same size as the door frame. And I'm kind of shaping it into a nice round. I'm going to take a knife and cut off the excess and blend the two ends together. I think what I'm going to do is, just for added security on this window, I think I'm just going to work on top of another piece of paper so that I know it will come loose from it and won't stick to it. And I'm going to take my sculpting tool and just shape it so it's a little bit more round. That's a little bit better. Now I'm going to make the wood on the inside of it, cross members. Let's put that in the inside there. Blend it in, cut it in, straighten it up. Put a small ball here, making basically a cross, a little cross in there for the 4 window lights that make up the window. And then just blend that in with the door frame and the other pieces of wood. This is, of course, imaginary. So that's how that looks. And you can just take your time and smooth it in. Straighten it up. And you can also, to be consistent with the door, you can put little markings on it. Okay, now we're going to put a little finish on this, and I think we're going to use a couple different colors here. This is Pigments, and I frequently use it, and I'm going to use a little bit of antique bronze. What I'm going to do is take just a little bit on my brush, a little tiny bit like that there, and put it in this lid, and that's just, that I'll work from that. And I think green would be nice, and this is spring green here. So I'll wipe my brush off on the rag in my lap, and pick up a little bit on the brush here like that. Put it in the lid. Just easier, but a little less messy. And then I'm going to dab off the excess on my workspace here, and I'm just going to work the brush into where the door, the actual door here. Let me get a little bit more on there. So the door itself, I want to be green. And still, I'm kind of looking for a nice subdued look. And then I'm going to take a little bit of bronze on my finger like that, swirl it with my thumb to get it nice and subdued on my finger, and then I'm just going to, a bit more on there, and put it on the door frame. The sides too, and I want to get the cross members as well. It's got a little bit of green on there, but I think that's okay for now. It'll be alright. And then I think I'm going to get a little bit of silver. What I can do is I turn that upside down like that. That gets it on the lid, because I only need a little tiny bit. Get it on my finger there, and hit that doorknob a little bit, like that. And then I think I'm just gonna, let me put this lid back on here, and I think I'm just going to get my window here. I'm just going to use a little bit of bronze, get this antique bronze here on the window. A little bit more on there. Now, some people like to glaze or seal these pieces and that sort of thing, and you can do that if you like. I personally like the really rustic look and the real natural look that I can obtain by putting the, just having it like I'm doing here. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to release the door from the board, and again, it just was paper with tape to kind of stop the door from sticking, and so when I go to pick up the door, I kind of just work it up carefully like that. And something you can do is you can take a knife or something like this and just blend the door frame into the door on the back side. You see that gap there. It'll just make it stronger if you do that. Okay, next we have to do something to help secure the door and window to the moss that we're going to put in our little fairy garden. And so I'm going to use wire, and this is 18 gauge galvanized steel wire. Use a pair of wire cutters to cut off a little bit of a length there, just to kind of free it up for us. And you know, depending on the thickness of the moss that you're putting in, you know, you just figure out the length based on that. I'm going to say about, maybe like about an inch or so, like that. We don't need much. We need maybe one here on the back side, here, 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 and here, and about the same on the window. So maybe 8 pieces altogether. There we go. So I'm just going to cut them all right now, so you can see how I'm doing that. Okay, now I'm going to take each little piece and I'm going to take a pair of needle nose pliers like this. Take hold of the very end of it like that and bend it at a right angle like that. Just take a needle nose pliers at the very end and bend it at a right angle like that. Okay, now what we're going to do is, the purpose of these pins, of course, is to make it possible for us to, you know, hold the door and the window to the moss. And the reason why we bend it at a right angle is so that the pin doesn't easily go through the door. So all I'm going to do is basically take the pin to the thickest part of the door frame, like that, and just kind of hook it into it like that. And then just take a tool, any kind of tool, and just push the clay in around it so it secures it there. Here's another one here. So I'm hooking it in. I'm not pushing it in. I'm hooking it in. Like that. And then I just basically take a tool and just push the clay in around it. And I'll do that on the on the door, off the sides here, and on the window as well. Okay, that's what it should look like there. Okay, and I only have 2 pins on this on the window, but that should be adequate. Now if you look into the video description down below the video, you're going to find a few things there. You'll find a tool and supply list that has everything that we use today, including, you know, everything basically. And you'll also find baking instructions for the clay. Now, the baking instructions are for Sculpey 3 because that's what we're using here today. If you have a different kind of clay, you might want to check the package and make sure that you're using the right baking time and temperature. It may be different than Sculpey 3. And then go ahead and bake your door and window, and we'll come back and get started on the garden. Okay, we're back, and the fairy door and window have been baked, and we're ready to roll here. And we've got a couple things going on. We got a glass vase and that we'll use for the fairy garden. Inside there are small pebbles that are there for drainage. You can add soil if you're adding plants, but moss does not require soil. It can help to bring moisture to the moss, soil can, so that is an option, of course. I have a bunch of different kinds of moss here. This is live moss. This here is fern moss, and I have mood moss and a couple of different kinds. And I will put a source for live moss in the video description down below the video. You'll find that in the tool and supply list. I also have some small pebbles, and I have some bigger stones. I have some moss growing on pieces of wood in case we want to use that. One of the sources I'm going to put in the video description for live moss actually supplies this as well, and moss growing on rocks, which I don't have any right now, but they do that, and so that's an option as well. And I'm going to go ahead and get started here with some fern moss. I think this will be, we'll just sort of play it by ear here, but you can tear the moss. It's probably the best way, just because it kind of gives it more of a natural finish on the edges as opposed to cutting it with a pair of scissors. And I'll just put it down in there. And kind of just, I'm just laying it in, and I'm just applying gentle pressure to it to sort of seat it in there. I'm not looking to squish it in there. I think I'll take a piece of mood moss and put it up against the back side here, and that will be for the place where the door and window can go. A little mossy fairy house. And then just take the let's see, maybe put it over here, so I'm putting the door in there and then just sort of pressing into place with the pins going into the moss. And the window as well. Now I'm not going to put the window like really upright. I'm going to kind of put it at a slant, so it's more fairy-like. Like that. That's pretty cute. And then I think maybe I'll take a piece of mossy wood here. Let me see, I might break that up a little bit. Maybe put that up there, kind of against the side of the door there. It's really fun. This is just a lot of fun. Now you can extend the life of the door and finish with a coat of spar varnish, so keep that in mind. That will be also in the video description. Let's put a stone over there, and let's see, maybe one over here. Yeah. And you can also, push up the moss to kind of run up on the door a little bit there. and maybe a few stones around there. Wow, so pretty. I have another stone here. I like this stone. It's kind of mottled gray stone. I'll maybe put that here. And you know, you could do a little pathway also. Just taking stones and laying them in. Like that. And also there's this moss I have here. If I take a piece of that, I'm not sure this will work, but I'm just sort of thinking it might be kind of nice if I put that along the top there and just sort of make it look more secluded. Kind of, you know, like it's growing around the door and window, and you're walking down this private, very secluded pathway, and you come across this, you know, little fairy door and house, or fairy house in the moss. Put some moss in there between the stones. We have a lot of moss here, so there's a lot of options as far as that goes. And just put it in there around the stones and near the door, and you know, and then when it's displayed, somebody will walk by and say, "Oh, wow! There's a little, there's a little fairy door in there. Oh my God! There's a little window too. Wow!" The main thing is not to like compress it, because it doesn't really like that very much. And you can also, if you have like stray ends, sometimes just cutting them off is better. It's really fun to work with moss. It's really beautiful, beautiful stuff. It looks very, the setting is very natural. Now let's finishing up here, and a couple things I wanted to tell you is you can you want to keep this in indirect sunlight. You don't want the sun beaming down on it. Indirect sunlight, and the best type of water to use is distilled water, because it doesn't have all the chlorine and stuff in it for the moss. And you can just mist it on like this. Just a misting bottle here, and you just want to keep it moist. On the other hand, you don't want to overwater. You want to be able to keep it moist, and you definitely don't want to fill it up past the pebbles with water. because then the moss will be sitting directly in the water. So that's about it. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of videos along these lines. Please also give the video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section. And thank you for watching. Be creative, have fun, and have a great day.